Hello class, this is lesson 11.3, corresponding parts of similar figures. So in this lesson, we're going to be given two similar figures, and then we're going to have to apply the definitions of similarity. One to find missing angles or find missing sides. So the two properties that we're going to focus on in this lesson are the properties of similar figures, and the first one involves angles and the second one involves sides. One thing that I want you guys to remember is that for similar figures, so these two are similar figures, so they're similar but they're not congruent, meaning that they have the same shape but different size. The angle measurement is always preserved. So the angle of A in this one is actually equal to the angle of X. And same thing for B to Y, C to Z. So whenever they tell you you have two similar figures, you already know the angles are congruent. So the angles are equal to each other. Now about the sides. Now we know the sides are not going to be congruent. We know the sides are not going to be equal. But they should be proportional because of that scale factor. So to create a proportion of a side, what we do is we have side AB over side XY, that's a proportion, or side BC over side YZ, or side AC over XZ. Notice that on top of these fractions are the sides of the smaller triangle, and on the bottom we have the sides of the bigger triangle. So let's look at some examples of how to find a missing side, or how to see if two sides are, if two figures are similar. So in this example, let's look at AB versus GH, and then BD versus HJ. So just like in this definition, we could create a proportion. We could say AB over GH. So AB over GH is equal to BD over HJ. This side over this side. 30 over 5 is equal to 48 over 8. 30 divided by 5. Well, actually, what they're doing is they're actually cross multiplying here. 30 times 8 is 240. 5 times 48 is 240. So notice that these two are equal to each other. One thing that I was going to do was, if I divide 30 and 5, I get 6, and 48 divided by 8 is also 6. So the scale factor would be 6, and these two figures are similar. If you look at this example here, so again, they just compare two sides of a big and small polygon. They said 24 over 4 and then 17 over 6. Cross multiplying, 24 times 6 is 144. 4 times 17 is 68. 144 is not equal to 68. So these two, even though they look like they might be similar, they're not similar because they do not equal each other. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating proportions or congruent statements, depending on what the question is asking. So for number one, figure ABCD is similar to figure MNKL. Now we don't have the figures drawn, but one thing that we know is that A corresponds to M, B corresponds to N, C corresponds to K, and then D corresponds to L. So they want us to create a proportion that contains BC and KL. So we want BC. Now if we have BC, then we're going to need NK, because BC is proportional to NK. And if we want KL, we're going to need CD. So what I'm going to write is BC over NK is equal to CD over KL. So these were the two letters in the middle, BC and K. These were the last letters, CD and KL. Okay, number 2. Triangle DEF is similar to triangle STU. Write a proportion that contains ST and SU. So if we want ST, what corresponds to ST is DE. And if we want SU, we're going to need DF, because S is the first letter, U is the last letter, D is the first letter, F is the last letter. Okay, so let's start with ST. What goes on the bottom? So the first two letters ST, the first two letters would be DE. SU would be DF. So that's your proportion statement. Then for number 3, triangle XYZ is similar to triangle XVW. Write the congruent statements that must be true. So in this one, they actually want you to write all the angle congruent statements. Actually, yeah, focus on the angle congruent statements. So the first letter corresponds to the first letter, second letter goes to the second letter, third letter goes to the third letter. So we could say angle X is congruent to angle X. We could say angle Y is congruent to angle V. Angle Z is congruent to angle W. So those are, sorry, let me erase this. Those are your congruent statements. Okay, so now we're going to apply these congruent statements, or these congruent properties and proportion properties to problems where we have to find missing variables. So let's focus on question 1 in this example. What they want us to do is find the value of X in figure ABCD. So here's figure ABCD. We want to solve for X. Now they actually tell us a few things. We have some sides and we have some angles. Angle C is 4x plus 27. Angle R is 95. The corresponding angles, so angle C corresponds to angle R, and we know that in similar figures the two angles are equal to each other. So we could say the measure of angle C is equal to the measure of angle R, and then substitute those values. 4x plus 27 equals 95. Subtract 27 to both sides, divide by 4, and you get x equals 17. So when we're talking about angles, we could set them equal to each other. For number 2, though, we are talking about sides. And for sides, we don't set the sides equal to each other, but what we do is we create a proportion. So let's look at the sides that we have. We have AB. Now what side corresponds to AB? That will be PS. Then we have AD, and what corresponds to AD would be PQ. So substituting those values, you have 4y over 10 equals 3y minus 5 over 5. Then we could cross multiply 5 times 4y. 10 times 3y minus 5. So we're here. 5 times 4y is 20y. Here we have to distribute 10 to the 3y and to the 5. So we get 30y minus 50. Subtract 30y to both sides. And then divide both sides by -10 and we get 5. So you should always get a positive answer when you're doing these problems because we shouldn't have any negative angles or negative sides. So y equals 5. Okay, so now we're going to try one problem of an angle and then one problem using sides. So if we look at these two figures, we have triangle ABC and triangle STU. Angle A corresponds to angle S, so we could say angle A is congruent to angle S. And then I could substitute the values. So I have 4x equals 100, and if I divide both sides by 4, I get x equals 25. For number 2, we're using sides, so let's create our proportion. Let's say we have AB, and the side that corresponds to AB is DE, and then we have AC over DF. Substitute the values, so we have 6 over 3 is equal to 10 over x. We could cross multiply and we get 6x equals 30 and divide both sides by 6 and x is equal to 5. Okay, and let's do one more problem, and this is going to be a challenging problem because the two figures are embedded in one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these two figures just so that you could see what is going on. Okay, so this is the small one. This is A, E, B, and this is A, D, C. So AE is 5.6. And then we have 3x plus 14 is the angle here. EB is 4. We know DC is 5. And then DA, this length right here, is actually 5.6 plus y. So 5.6 plus the y. And then we have this as 50 degrees. So let's start by finding out what x is. So angle B corresponds to angle C. So I'm going to write angle B is congruent to angle C. Then substitute the values. 3x plus 14 is equal to 50. Subtract 14 to both sides, and I get 3x is equal to 36. Divide both sides by 3, and x is equal to 12. Okay, and then for number 4, we want to solve for y, so we're going to create that proportion. We want to say AE over AD is equal to EB over DC. Then let's substitute all the values. We have 5.6 over 5.6 plus y is equal to, EB is 4, and then DC is 5. So when we multiply 5.6 times 5, so let me kind of show my work. We're going to have 5.6 times 5 is equal to 4 times 5.6 plus y. So I'm cross multiplying. 5.6 times 5 is 28. 4 times 5.6 . So let me get a calculator for that. So 4 times 5.6 is 22.4. And then 4 times y is 4y. Subtract 22.4 to both sides. So 28 minus 22.4, I get 5.6 equals 4y. And then divide both sides by 4. And I get y is equal to 1.4. Okay, so that completes this lesson, this lesson's homework. Let's look at the homework. This is lesson 11.3. And let me see. I kind of want to talk you guys through the checkpoint really quick. So it says in the diagram, NPQ is similar to NLM. So NPQ, NLM, okay? Find the value of X. So if we look at the angles, angle P and angle L are congruent. So you're going to be using angle P is congruent to angle L. Then you're going to substitute these values. So 60 equals 3x plus 18 and solve for x. For number 2, you're going to find the value of y. And then they actually tell you to remember that NL is 3. So this is 3. So our proportion, we want to say, let me see. Let's say we have NP over NL is equal to NQ over NM. So this NP over NL is equal to NQ over NM. And then we solve. All right, guys, well, that completes this lesson. Have a good day.